Welcome to Royally Unfiltered, the show where we take you behind the palace gates like never before. This is where tradition meets truth and nothing is off limits. This week, helping me tackle all the biggest headlines are, I mean, these are the best royal insiders you could possibly get. Grant Harrold and Dickie Arbiter. I am so excited to be with both of you today. What a blessing to have you. Um, I don't think that I have spoken to either of you since this has been, without a doubt, that's one of the toughest years we've had when it comes to the royal watching community. I would like both of you to respond to a really intense year for the British royal family, not just King Charles, but Catherine, the Princess of Wales. Very privileged information, them allowing us to know that they both had cancer at one point or another. Hopefully, the Princess of Wales is currently in the clear. Grant, you were the butler for King Charles from 2004 to 2011. I mean, I've watched as you've personally made health and wellness a priority this year. Do you admire the King's commitment to service and his persistence through his cancer treatment?
I do. Thank you for having me on. No, I do. I think, do you know, as Dickie probably agree, the thing about the king, even as Prince of Wales, he's always had this kind of drive, this inner determination, and he's never. I mean, when I worked with him, obviously he was in good health, but he never let anything kind of stop or waver him. He was. I always remember being admiring how much he put into things that he did, and also the hours that he worked. I used to be quite amazed that getting up in the morning, he would be already up and about and going to bed. I'd be going to bed, and he would still be working away. So he's got this inner determination. So it doesn't surprise me that in the face of such an awful disease, that he is still carrying on regardless. But that's kind of him, and from my experiences, he doesn't, from what I remember, he doesn't like any kind of fuss around him. He just likes to kind of focus to be on what his projects are. That's how I remember him. So, no, kind of, I'm not really surprised, but I do admire, of course, anybody that's going through that disease and able to kind of just get on with life, which thankfully so many do. I admire him for that. And obviously Princess Wales.
Absolutely. I think we could learn a lot from the king waking up every day and wanting to focus on the tasks at hand versus, we're in a world of social media and selfies. So it's so refreshing to see somebody focused on service. Mr. Arbiter, we'll talk a little bit about your work with the king because you also worked with the king and the late Princess of Wales, Diana. But I do think that you're highly celebrated for being a press spokesman for the late Queen Elizabeth from 1988 until 2000. The individuals that have the equivalent of your job today had a very difficult task this year. Did you sympathize with them? And what advice would you have given them if you were in if you were in the position to speak to them?
Thanks for having me on, Kinsey. Sympathize is not a word I would use because it's a sea change in terms of the way the king handles his communications. If you look back to the time when the late Queen was suffering what the palace was calling mobility issues, that's as far as they went. They wouldn't go any further. And in previous years, if somebody had a head cold or a chest infection, that's as far as they went. To actually come out and say, firstly, the king going into hospital for an enlarged prostate, that was a sea change. That was a big move forward. And it was very good for the health authorities in the UK because, like America or any country in the world, to get men to go to the doctor to get a checkup when there is clearly a prostate problem is a very difficult thing to do. And the king coming out and doing it helped the National Health Service in the UK because a lot of people felt, well, if he can do it, I can do it too. So that was good. And it was good that the communications people came out with firstly saying that he had a prostate problem, and then a few weeks later saying that he does have a cancer, not cancer of what, and that he will continue his constitutional role, but behind closed doors, which is very important, which meant that he was able to carry on as normal as you can, having treatment, while not doing his secondary job, which is head of nation, going out and about in the country and meeting people, which is what he likes to do and what he does incredibly well. Even Grant will know, as Prince of Wales, he's a people person. So the communications
Mm.
was on the nail, on the button. Unlike in my day, I mean, everybody remembers 1992, the Annus Horribilis, when anything that could go wrong did go wrong. We had Diana and her true story written by Andrew Morton, which was a bombshell. We had Fergie having her toes sucked in the south of France by her lover while sunbathing topless. She was separated from Andrew, but not divorced. We had the fire at Windsor Castle. We had the separation of Charles and Diana. That was big, and that was very difficult to handle in terms of communications, but we all survived it. So what they're doing now, they're very much upfront. They're on the front foot to prevent any unnecessary gossip, unnecessary speculation, and they've done an incredibly good job.
Absolutely. I'm so glad to hear you being so positive towards them because you already used this word, but there was an intimacy that I felt this time around, and it felt like a privilege to get some of that information. Grant, you also worked with Princes William and Harry. Has
Mm.
your opinion of Prince William changed over the last year? We saw him take on a lot of responsibility, and he was so stoic and focused in the process.
He was, and again, I mean, obviously, it's a few years since I left, but I think what I admire about William is he's always his character's always been the same. He hasn't really, from what I can see, kind of changed. But um, I do admire the amount of responsibility he's had to take on in a quite a short space of time. Of course, he always knew one day he'd be Prince of Wales, and he knew what that meant. Uh, but he's obviously taken on, and he's very much doing his own role. I mean, some people have said recently, "Oh, he doesn't seem to do as much as the Prince of Wales." Well, he's only been doing it for such a short space of time. His father was the longest Prince of Wales in history, and of course, it takes time to get to grips with all these changes, with obviously taking on the duchy. But I think he's doing a really good job, but he's always been quite. I mean, again, Dickie knew him I'm sure as a young boy, and I don't know obviously what it was like back then. But my experience of him, he always had this. He was more the serious one. I don't know if Dickie noticed that when they were younger, but he was always the serious one of the two, and always the one that was the kind of grown up, if you like. So again, I'm not really surprised at the fact he's kind of taken on the role, but he's got a nice balance. He's got the humorous side, which I remember, which he very much puts into it. But he's got his serious side, which comes from his father, his grandmother. And it's also interesting that he's made this comment about, monarchy going forward without the capital R, which I kind of understand what he's saying. I think what he's trying to do is part of modernizing the monarchy. And I think what he's trying to say is that, the monarchy is very much part of Britain, the Commonwealth. It's really, obviously, it's important. But at the same time, I think he's trying to say that, there's so many other things that are equally as important. At one time monarchy was the be all and end all. And I think it's changed a lot. I mean, even the late Queen, I think she always said she put duty ahead of everything, the service quite right of her people, the country. But the younger ones, again, quite rightly, are focused on family and health, which even Catherine, Princess of Wales, has said. So it's changed. But yeah, I think William is doing an amazing job. But again, not hugely surprised. But I do feel for him because he's not only had to take on the responsibility. Obviously becoming Prince of Wales, but he's also now got the added responsibility where his father was unwell, having to take on the extra duties, as did, we should mention, Queen Camilla as well.
Absolutely. Dickie, I would like your reaction to the royalty, the lowercase r. That has been a huge debate in the royal watching community. Some of the commentators really vicious towards Prince William over that statement. And I agree with Grant that he didn't mean it in any sort of way in the sense that he was going to challenge the king or the late Queen Elizabeth and his way of being a monarch. Do you have a response to that sentence that he said and how you interpreted it?
Well, I think first and foremost, we've got to realize that unlike my day, today we've got social media. Social media is a vicious animal, and some of the platforms are absolute cesspits. I mean, I'm going to name one of them, X stroke Twitter, is a cesspit. And it's interesting to see how over the past few weeks, droves of people are leaving it and going elsewhere, going to another platform. So they've had to contend with that, and there was a lot of vicious, not necessarily reporting, but commenting by people on social media about suggesting William was lazy. They forget that he was a full-time search and rescue helicopter pilot in the Royal Air Force. He was doing a job of work. He then retired from the Air Force and he joined an air ambulance service because he was a helicopter pilot. He was trained by the taxpayer, and he felt that while he was still young enough, he'd put that training to good use. And he did put it to good use, and he spent just over 2 years doing that job. Now he's a full-time royal. He's doing things differently, the way that royals have done in the past. He's doing things differently to his father, but he is making his mark. I mean, look at Earthshot, how successful that is. He's very focused on the environment. That's something he learned from his father. His mother gave him the high street and everything attached to the high street, which is why he's so interested in homelessness, why he's so interested in young people taking drugs and doing something about it. This initiative of him is getting people off the streets over the next 5 years, and he is going to work at it. And he's taken on charities that his mother took on, Centrepoint being one of them, which deals with homeless people. So he is actually putting his money where his mouth is, but he's just doing it very differently. And the old school, I don't suppose, can really get used to the idea of the way he's doing it. He's doing his Duke of Cornwall duty with the duchy, very different to the way that his father did it. But at the same time, he is remembering too, he is a family man. He has a wife who has cancer. She's still having preventative treatment and she's coming out of that slowly. He has 3 young children and he wants time with them, which his father and Diana didn't have with him and Harry. And his grandmother and grandfather, the Queen, late Queen and late Prince Philip, didn't have with their children. So he's making up for something that didn't run in the family. And he is actually doing a good job. He is very serious. He knows where he is going to. He knows where he has come from, and he's going to make the most of it. But all the time and all the while, he is in support of his wife and children, and he is in support of his father, the king, and his stepmother, Queen Camilla, who has done an incredibly outstanding job filling in for the king when he couldn't go out and about, and just taking the initiative and doing the job in support, again, not just of a husband, but of the monarchy as an institution.
Well, you both worked incredibly close to the family, and I know that this must have been a difficult year for you too, as you watched some of this unfold. So, first of all, thank you so much for all of your great contributions when it comes to the British royal family, and you were in my thoughts throughout this process, and I'm sorry that you probably had some heartache over the last year as well. But I'm going to transition to a much less exciting topic, and I apologize in advance. Let's talk about royal author Duncan Larcombe's recent comments to Woman magazine that while Prince Harry likely considers himself a loving father and husband, something he always wanted, Duncan believes that the Duke has not gained much else since stepping down as a senior member of the royal family. Duncan said Meghan's dreams have all come true, but what about Harry's? He's now richer than he ever was, even more famous and surrounded by celebrity hangers-on rather than the group of trusted people who call friends. Duncan suggests that Prince Harry might be feeling lonely and unfulfilled at times. I don't know if you've seen it yet, but today the new trailer dropped for Prince Harry's Netflix docuseries Polo. It's a 5-part series. Prince Harry's latest project caused tension, according to the Daily Mail, with Netflix, because he's barely in it. And in that trailer, he's not in it at all. Grant, what's your first reaction, or what's your instinct when you hear quotes like this? The idea that Meghan Markle is making her dreams come true while Prince Harry is being sidelined. Do you tend to agree or disagree?
Well, with the greatest respect, she's absolutely made her dreams come true, whether it be for right or wrong reason. She married a prince. How many ladies out there, girls out there want to marry a prince? So, of course, she's made her dreams come true. Do you know what's difficult, Kinsey, is that, like Dickie, I mean, I remember, again, a very joyful, carefree Harry who had a great relationship with his dad, great relationship with his brother. Obviously, had a few dates along the way with different. I remember at Chelsea was around when I was there, and it was always a great atmosphere. And then obviously there's been so many extraordinary things that have happened over the last 4 years. or it's probably maybe even more towards the end of the Queen's life, and it's just all so baffling, and I just don't understand. I don't really understand all of it, to be completely honest. But I think from Harry's point of view, is he living the life he really wants? Deep down, I don't think he is. I, I'm not saying he's not happy with in his marriage or with his children. I'm sure he is. That's not, I don't even question that. But I just, he's got friends here. I mean, I still live near Highgrove in the Cotswolds. I still see some of his friends, and none of them hear from him anymore. These are really close friends. Obviously his family. He's just changed so much in such a short space of time, and I don't see how you can do that and still be happy. And obviously, there's been talk about him coming back, or coming over to Portugal. I said, well, maybe that's a way of getting back into Europe, but who knows, maybe coming back to the UK. I mean, it's of course it's highly unlikely, but I just find it all very sad. So yes, he's got fame, he's got money, he's got obviously his wife, and he's got his kids, his family, which obviously he adores and protects. But deep down, I do kind of wonder if he's got regrets, not to do so much with his marriage, but to do with the breakup with his family, especially with his brother. But yes, I mean, for Meghan, I don't really know. I mean, I suppose she is thinking that it's the perfect kind of lifestyle, the perfect life. She's one of the most famous ladies in the world, without question, due to marrying Prince Harry and due to everything that's happened. But it is all a bit of I just feel it's, if I'm being honest, it's a bit of a sad kind of mess, the whole thing, with the relationship. And I don't know what Dickie thinks. I keep kind of hoping that behind closed doors that times have moved on, and there's some sort of communication. I don't know that. I'd like to think there was, because I say they were so close at one point.
First of all, I have to warn you, Grant, Ellen DeGeneres has moved to your neighborhood. So mentally prepare for Ellen.
Oh, has she?
Yeah.
Oh, great. I'll see in the local shops then. Amazing.
Yeah. She purchased the home before the election, but after Trump won, she said, "I'm getting out of Montecito."
Oh, great.
So you might
Okay.
actually see Harry and Meghan in the neighborhood inevitably, since they're friends.
I'll get Dickie myself can meet up with her for a cup of tea or coffee.
Yeah, exactly. Now, Dickie, first of all, I'd love to allow you to respond to Grant's question, whether you believe that there might be some communication going on behind the scenes, because as far as we're being told, Camilla, the Queen, has specifically been very protective of King Charles because she wants to ensure that there's no additional stress put on him throughout this process. And then I have kind of a catty question to ask you. So I'll let you respond to Grant first, and then I'll ask you my next question.
Well, in their communication, it's a very difficult scenario because no parent likes to lose a son. And he's lost a son because Harry decided that he wanted to walk out the royal family. He didn't want anything to do with it. He went to Canada and then settled in California, in your neck of the woods. Are they happy? I'm not terribly sure they are, because they're not actually fulfilling anything. They're just doing what they've signed up with Netflix. Netflix are unhappy because Harry hardly appears in this latest series. That's not what they paid for. Yes, it's all very well making money, but you've got to be happy with it. And money doesn't necessarily mean happiness. Is Meghan, and has she fulfilled? I don't think she's fulfilled either. And when you look at the glitterati in the United States that all sort of beat a path to their door right at the very beginning, where are they now? They've dispersed. You never see them. You never see them all together. And I think they've had their fingers burnt. And I don't believe for a moment that they won't have anything to do with the Sussexes. They've done too many silly things. I mean, look at Oprah. Everything's come back to bite them because everything they accused the royal family of has proven to be untrue. Look at that 6 hours of Netflix. It was a slam at the royal family, and then Spare, 600 pages of Spare. You can't turn the other cheek. You know, the Bible teaches us to turn the other cheek. There aren't enough cheeks to turn on this one. And they want an apology. I'm not sure who wants an apology, whether it's Harry or Meghan or both of them. But to apologize for what? What people seem to forget, and there are those who say, well, why couldn't they do both jobs? Late Queen had an experience with Edward and Sophie right at the very beginning of their marriage in 1999, where Edward was a television producer, Sophie was a public relations consultant, and she blabbed a bit. She got caught in a sting. It came out, and they decided that they were going to shut up shop in both their businesses and become full-time royals. You cannot mix commercial with royal family. It's a conflict of interest. And Meghan and Harry wanted the best of both worlds. Life is not like that. You're either a member of the royal family or you're not. And I don't think commercially it's working out for them, because Netflix are not happy with them. Meghan has had various projects shelved because she can't use titles for certain products. The patent office is not granting patent to their names. So they're having a very difficult time. Moving to Portugal, interesting one. Grant said, is this their stepping stone back into the UK? I don't think so. Harry probably would like to come back to the UK. I don't think Meghan would ever want to step foot in the UK. And the thing that's really upsetting Harry, he hasn't got any friends. You've got a lot of strap hangers in the States who want to sort of hang on to their shirt tails, but he hasn't actually got any friends. All his friends are over here. They're long-term friends. They're friends he made at school, friends he made in the army. They're here. He's there. And I think he's a lonely little boy.
Oof, that breaks my heart hearing that. Although, actions have consequences. I did want to say, Harry and Meghan talk a lot about their global impact. Dickie, are you expecting POLO to solve world hunger or inspire world peace? How does this contribute to their charity endeavors? You talk about their commercial arms not necessarily being successful, and I think POLO is not going to resonate with a normal Netflix viewer.
With what's going on in the world today, you've got a change of presidency coming up in the United States in a few weeks' time in January. You've got conflict in Ukraine and between Ukraine and Russia. You've got conflict in the Middle East. People have got too many things on their mind. How is it going to affect them? Is what's happening in the Ukraine going to affect Europe? Is what's happening in the Middle East going to spread into Europe? There are too many imponderables. And as far as something like POLO, I don't think people are in the slightest bit interested. They know polo is an elitist sport. And to see, sort of rich guys sitting on polo ponies, knocking a ball across the line and chasing a ball, it's a different world. They can't fathom out this world. It's something that's just not important to them. What is important to them is what's going on in the world today. What's going to affect them? Is conflict going to affect them? Is the economy going to affect them? And quite frankly, polo's going to bite the dust.
Oh, preach, preach. All right. King Charles, according to biographer Robert Hardman, he might, I should say, start removing treasures from Prince Andrew's Royal Lodge estate if concerns develop around the quality of Prince Andrew's self-funded security moving forward. Mr. Hardman said the royal collection, which owns quite a lot of the treasures inside there, may say, well, we can't be confident that this place is safe anymore, and they'll start taking the paintings and some of the furniture away. Grant, you know how difficult it can be to manage the upkeep on estates of that size and around, how to deal with items that are sacred with historical value. How confident are you that Prince Andrew is up to the task when it comes to trying to take on a lot of this stuff himself?
Well, the first thing I was thinking is that, for example, with a lot of these royal homes, they are finished with items from the royal collection. I remember that as Dickie will from my time there. Now, they rotate these items round. I remember going into certain rooms and I suddenly think, wow, that picture's changed. And it wasn't because somebody has taken it, it's because Royal Collection have come in and swapped it over. So that's part of what they do. For different reasons, because another member of the family wants it. Back in the day, it was because the Queen maybe wanted it. It could have been it was on display on an exhibition. So that's the first thing I'll mention, is that it's not unusual to see items getting removed and vice versa. The thing about Prince Andrew is, he's grown up in this lifestyle of living in these palaces and great homes and everything. So he's quite used to having these objects around. So there's no reason to have those items removed or taken away. However, I don't know. It is possible the king could have said, right, if you're funding this, you're doing this yourself, you can finish it yourself. That is completely possible. That if it depends on the relationship. I don't know what player that is at just now. So it's possible. But again, it's just I just don't really understand it because again, with Royal Collection, they do put items in, but if Andrew is now kind of, if you like, self-sufficient and he's funding it himself, it is more than likely that maybe there's been discussion that said, right, we'll take the items of the Royal Collection away from that house and he's going to finish it himself. But these are big houses, they're not small. So he's going to, if he's having to finish it, he's going to have to, but he might already have most of his things in there. It could only be a few items and maybe that are Royal Collection. So it's going to be interesting to see what the outcome of that is. Again, that's an interesting situation with the relationship because, again, when I was there, different times, the two of them got on. Really well. Obviously, with everything that's happened, I think with everything that has taken place, is the king's obviously been very protective, quite rightly, the royal family, kind of being very careful what he does when it comes to Prince Andrew. And again, obviously, members of the public, they're not very tolerant, quite rightly, with everything that's happened. So the king's just playing it careful. So if he has asked items to remove, that's what I'm saying. It wouldn't surprise me. But at the same time, Royal Collection does come and take things away and swap things over.
I think it was Harry and Meghan that complained about having to buy an IKEA couch. Prince Andrew might be the next, having to walk through the IKEA.
Oh, how hard times have fallen them, hasn't it? Having to go and get an IKEA couch.
It's a tough life. Dickie, Grant has said something that's been heavy on my heart lately. I don't want to believe that there's any animosity between King Charles and Prince Andrew, especially with how tough this year has been for the king health-wise. In Prince Andrew, he lives with Fergie, who also dealt with breast cancer recently. Do you have any opinion or insight into what that relationship might be like today? I want to reject the idea that there is hostility between these two. Am I just in the Christmas spirit? Am I prematurely full of joy? Or do you think I'm just delusional?
Look, blood is thicker than water, isn't it? And they are brothers. They grew up together. Well, uh, by the time Andrew was born, his Charles was 22 by the time Andrew was born. So blood is thicker than water. He's frustrated with the way that Andrew is behaving. He's offered him something within the Windsor estate that is secure or allegedly secure, although we had this theft of a tractor and a truck a few days ago, where raiders just rammed the security pole and drove in. But it is secure, and he did offer. But Andrew has, as Grant was saying, this sort of grandiose idea. He was brought up in a palace. He was given by his mother, late Queen, Royal Lodge after late Queen Mother died in 2002. He spent a lot of money on it in having it restored. And it does take a lot of money. Where he's getting this money from, nobody knows. There are a lot of question marks over it. Although the keeper of the Privy Purse, which is the chief accountant that looks after the money within Buckingham Palace, has okayed it. So it seems that it must be okay. But when it comes to the Royal Collection, Andrew has got to spend a lot of money on renovating it and keeping it up to scratch. That is the deal with the Crown Commissioners, the Crown Estate, that he has to keep it to a certain level. If he doesn't, then he's kicked out. And that costs money. The outside's got to be done. Some of the inside has got to be done. And if the inside has got to be done, then anything that belongs to the Royal Collection is going to be removed for safekeeping. Whether it comes back again remains to be seen. You mentioned IKEA. There's actually nothing wrong with IKEA.
No, it's my entire living room.
It's pretty good, and it's within everybody's pocket. So he doesn't actually need a loan. He can buy IKEA off his Navy pension. But yeah, there is frustration on the part of the king that his brother can't see sense, that he's got this grandiose idea, living in a 30-room house, 92 acres of ground. He doesn't need that. His wife is a lodger, is an unpaying lodger, and she's always been a bit of a scrounger, sort of getting free accommodation where she can. And they're rattling around in this big house. They don't need it. And who does pay for the upkeep? Where is this money coming from? It remains to be seen. Security is gone. How the security is going to be paid for. Is it this money that is coming from an unknown source? We don't know. All will be revealed in the fullness of time. But he really does need to grow up. That's Andrew, that is. He needs to grow up. He needs to cut his coat according to his cloth and get out of it, because it is a millstone round his neck. He's not doing himself any favors in terms of reputation. His reputation shot anyway. By hanging on by his fingertips in Royal Lodge, it's not getting any better. And he should bite the bullet and say, "Okay, brother, I'll take Frogmore Cottage, and make the best of it."
Dickie, you're a soundbite machine. I understand why you were such a valued member of the royal family, because every time you say something, I'm like, that's biblical what you just said. That's amazing. Let's really quickly, I won't take up too much more of your time, and I greatly appreciate you spending time with me today. We are approaching, this will air tomorrow, so this is the week anniversary of Princess Diana sitting down with BBC journalist Martin Bashir, and James Hewitt, which we now know is one of Diana's former lovers, has lashed out at the interview. The interviewer, now 29 years after it originally aired. He told The Sun on Sunday, and as you know, we recently discovered factually that Bashir had used devious means to secure this interview. Hewitt is saying that basically Bashir's a toad and that he ruined his life, and that people should not take this interview seriously because, and I understand it, he feels like Diana was so worked up that it's really not an authentic expression of Diana, what Diana was feeling at the time. And Hewitt's still just angry at Martin Bashir, as a lot of us are, over this interview. Dickie, you were representing King Charles, then the Prince of Wales, at the time of this interview, right? What was the process like? Were you hearing from people and having to respond to this earth-shattering interview? What was that like, that time in your life like?
Well, firstly, let's take Hewitt, for example. People in glass houses shouldn't throw stones because he did a kiss and tell. So why he's going on about Bashir? Yeah, Bashir conned his way into Diana's confidence, and he conned his way in BBC as well by doing that interview. And what is quite interesting is that Hewitt, why he's coming out now. I mean, Bashir is done and dusted. The BBC have done their investigations. They're still doing it. Lord Spencer has challenged the BBC over how Bashir got to do the interview and how he conned his way in. It's very murky, and I think we have to move on from that. What is quite interesting is that what's come out is that Diana wouldn't have gone off and to Paris, to the south of France with Dodi, had she not done the interview, had she not broken up and divorced Charles, and it was all about security. I've got to set the record straight here, because everybody's saying, well, she lost her security in 1996 at the time of the divorce. She didn't. She actually got rid of security in December 1993 because she didn't want it. She felt that it was intrusive, that they were spying on her, her policeman. Had she had the policeman, we'd be talking about Diana today because she'd be very much with us. But I think the whole business about Hewitt, I mean, who is Hewitt? He's nothing. He was a one-time household cavalry officer. He was a captain. He didn't make great shakes in the household cavalry and the army. He did a kiss and tell book, and he shouldn't be sort of going on about Bashir. We've all gone on about Bashir. It shouldn't have been done. It was done. We now have to move on.
Great points. Grant, I want to ask you your personal opinion, because I kind of side with Prince William, where I say, let's shelve this interview. Let's never see it again. Then, I mean, after Prince William said that, then Prince Harry has it in his Netflix docuseries, which I thought was vile, especially after Prince William was so emotional about that. But, Andrew Morton, speaking of, Dickie mentioned his book earlier, Diana, Her True Story. Andrew Morton and Christopher Anderson, who are both royal authors, approached me after I said that I felt like that interview should be put away forever, and said it was historically this representation of Diana, and we should continue to see it. We should, because it was the truth. Um, Even though they knew about the Bashir thing, they said it was just kind of this representation of Diana. Was this one of her big mistakes? And should we put it away forever? What's your opinion?
Well, without, first thing I'll say without any question, Dickie's definitely authority in this because he was there when it was all happening. I was just a teenager, like everybody else, watching this. But yes, historically, of course, it's important. It's in decades and centuries to come, it's always going to be one of those subject that we talked about and be remembered. Obviously, as Dickie mentioned, the way that it was, we now know the way that it was put together was wrong. She did obviously voice her. She was very I mean, again, Dickie knew her. I didn't know her, but you could see she was very much emotional with the way she was explaining things, and it really affected her. She literally bared her soul, to the world. Um, and again, now we know how that was achieved. It should never really have happened, but it did happen. And yes, historically it is important. But I also agree that again with William, he's trying to focus on the positive things about his mother's legacy or her life. And so when this comes up, obviously it's not such a positive thing. And I say it is historical, but in years to come, it'll be an easier subject to be brought up or to talk about, but it's still quite raw, even though I can't believe 29 years. Gosh, it makes me even feel old thinking 29 years. But as I say, it is important, it's historical, and many people get different opinions on it. But I agree. I think, it's one of those interviews that, not to be forgotten, but it certainly could be sidestepped for now. But obviously with the anniversary, and again, if this is 20 and the next year is going to be 30, it's going to be discussed again next year. So that will probably come up again. But I think it's obviously still getting talked about all these years later. So it will probably continue to be. But I think what Prince William's trying to do a few times, he's mentioned different things he doesn't want to kind of repeat about his mother, and you can see he wants to focus on the positive things, which is quite right. It's any kind of son to want to do for his mother. As you mentioned, Harry did the kind of opposite, which is Harry. Don't quite understand that either, but there we go. But yeah, I think historically it's important. We all know, and we always will know the reasons as to why the interview took place. But she did still obviously kind of be her soul. But as I said, I was a bystander. I mean, Dickie was there, and it must have been extraordinary times to be involved or to be part of all of that. I can't even imagine. I mean, it was, luckily when I was there, we didn't have these kind of things. The thing that I had to worry about, I think, was making sure I didn't make the tea too strong, back when I was there. That was a worst case situation.
That's perfect. Dickie, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think, Grant up to a point is right. It is historical, but authors and journalists will always say, yeah, we need access to it. It needs to be seen because it just keeps the narrative going. But we've got generations now who didn't know anything about Diana, didn't know Diana. And I think regurgitating that, which would be out of context, is not the right way to go in remembering Diana. She did some tremendous work. In the early days, she did terrific work. She did terrific work in, for example, the landmines issue, bringing landmines out into the public that governments hitherto beforehand were not doing anything about. But as soon as she walked through that minefield or cleared minefield, governments suddenly sat up and said, we've got to do something about this. And they did. And when Harry went to Southern Africa, in what was it, 2019 or 2020, 2019, he went to that very same spot. And he was in a town, and that town, when Diana went, was bush, and it was cleared of landmines. And he was able to go now to a town, to the exact spot his mother had been. And I think we've got to remember the good things that Diana did. It's very easy to be negative. It's very hard, and you have to work at it to be positive. And I think we need to be positive where Diana is concerned. She did some very silly things, but she did some very positive things, and we should remember her for that.
Was she so beautiful, Dickie? Was she so sweet? I've always loved her.
Well, people say she was beautiful. She was very attractive. I wouldn't call her a beauty. She always made sure that when she was out on the job, that the photographers got the right side of her face, because if she turned at a certain angle, she had quite a big nose, and she was very conscious of that. So, she was conscious of that. So, yeah, she played up to the camera. She played extremely well to the camera. She knew where they were. Unlike the late Queen, she knew where the cameras were. She'd make sure they got a picture, and then she'd get on with the job. But Diana, if photographers were there, they'd say, Diana, 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 and she'd turn and look at them. Sometimes when she got fed up, she'd turn their back on them, and they didn't like that.
No, I bet they did not. Royal Insiders, Grant Harrold and Dickie Arbiter, thank you for your time and excellent insight today. What a treat to get to spend my Thursday with you. What a blessing. And Dickie, make sure you tell your beautiful daughter I said hello. What she is so precious. And Grant, you're looking great these days. I hope you know how handsome you are.
This is my as Dickie knows, I know Dickie does the ships as well, and most people go on the ships and eat, and I did the opposite. I went on a keep fit gym, lose weight, this kind of thing. So this is my this is but keeping it off is another matter. That's a different thing. But I'm about to go and have my dinner on my IKEA table in a minute.
You do it.
So if you
do it.
yeah.
I don't do gyms. I do horses. I ride horses.
Oh wow,
That's more sensible.
Dickie, I would buy that calendar. You on 12 different horses? That's a calendar I would hang up in my house proudly.
No, I'm not. I mean, the last one I did a fancy dress charity ride. For the Royal Marsden Hospital, which is a cancer hospital, and I went as Captain America.
Oh wow! What a sight!
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I hope I get to speak to you both again soon. And if I don't, happy holidays. And I am so grateful to spend any time with you because I think you're both so wonderful and uplifting. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Kinsey, and happy holidays to you too. And happy Thanksgiving.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you.
happy Thanksgiving.